Hi. Today we'll start with the basics, learning about local variables and basic data types in C#. These are fundamental concepts that form the foundation of any program written in this language. In this lesson, we will learn what variables are and how they work. We will take a closer look at local variables, explore the basic data types in C#. You will also learn how to print messages to the Unity console, and see how different data types interact with one another. Today, we will focus on exploring local variables. But first, let's understand what a variable is. Think of a variable in programming as a box or container where you can store data. It's used to hold information that can change during the execution of a program. Working with a variable can be divided into two steps: declaration and assignment. Declaration is like creating the box. We're telling the computer that we want to use a variable to store some data. Assignment is the action of placing a value inside that box, or replacing whatever was already there. For example, we can declare a variable first and assign a value to it later, whenever it's convenient. Or we can declare the variable and assign a value to it in a single line. In programming, variables can hold different types of data, such as numbers, text, dates, and more. Variables allow us to store and manipulate information inside a program. The key feature of local variables is that they can only be used within the curly braces where the variable was declared. There are several basic data types we can put into our box, such as int, float, string, and bool. These can be numbers, words, or something else. But if we speak in the language of programmers, it would look like this. Int. A variable of this type must contain an integer, non-decimal value such as 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Float, similar to int in that it also works with numbers, but unlike int, it holds floating point numbers, that is, decimal values like 1.2, 5.4, 6.5, etc. You can also assign an integer to a float variable, but the difference will show up during mathematical operations, which we'll cover later. One important rule is that when assigning a value to a float variable, you must add the letter F at the end. String. A string holds a word, phrase, or any sequence of characters. The value assigned to a string variable must always be enclosed in quotation marks. Even if you assign a number, it won't be treated as a number by the computer, but rather as a character or a sequence of characters. Bool, short for Boolean. This data type represents simple binary logic. It can hold either yes or no, or in programming terms, true or false. Boolean variables are used to check whether a certain condition is true. Of course, these are not all the data types available for variables. They are the core ones, and enough to get you started with C#. As you've seen in the screenshots, when declaring a variable, we first write the data type, then the variable name, and optionally assign a value. And at the end of any line in C#, we place a semicolon. It doesn't matter whether you're declaring a variable or writing any other statement. This is a general rule throughout the language. Now, to better understand how local variables work, let's take a look at them in practice. Open the project we created in Lesson 1. Here in the project window, inside the Assets folder, let's create a new folder. To do this, right-click on the Assets folder, choose Create, Folder, and name it Script. Inside this new folder, we'll create a script. Again, right-click, go to Create, and select C# Script. Let's name it something like MyScript. Now let's run it. The script opens, and by default, if it's created in a Unity project, it will contain two methods, start and update. We'll talk about what methods are in one of the next lessons, but for now, what's important is that local variables, which we're learning about in this lesson, only work inside the methods where they're declared. That is, within these curly braces. Let's zoom in to make it easier to see, like this. And let's delete the update method. since we won't need it. A special feature of the start method is that it runs only once when the scene starts. That means when we press the play button in Unity, the scene loads, we enter play mode, and the code inside the start method executes just once. So, let's do something fundamental, a classic starting point for learning almost any programming language. Let's declare a variable of type string. We write string and name the variable something like hello. Then we immediately assign it the value hello world. By the way, if we tried to use this variable later without assigning it a value first, it would cause an error and the code wouldn't compile. Now let's display our greeting in the Unity console. To output anything to the console, we can use the debug.log function for printing debug messages. To do this, go to the next line and type debug. Visual Studio will automatically try to predict what we might want to write and suggest an option. To avoid typing the entire line manually and speed things up, we could simply press the Tab key and the line would be completed automatically. So let's type .log, open the parentheses, and inside the parentheses, we specify what we want to display. Since we want to show the value of our variable, we write its name. Whenever we write the name of a variable somewhere, this is called a get. It means we're accessing the variable and asking it to give us its value, whatever it's currently storing. All done? Now let's save our changes and switch back to Unity. We wait for the compilation to finish. Now, for our script to work, we need to add it to the game scene in the hierarchy right here. For this, let's create an empty object in the scene onto which we'll drag our script. Now, simply drag the script from the project window into the inspector window. Make sure you have the new game object selected in the hierarchy window. And that's it. Our script is now attached to this object. Open the console and press the play button. As we can see, our message is displayed. Congratulations! You've just written your very first piece of C# code. If your console happens to be empty, check whether message display is enabled. To do this, click the message toggle button in the top right corner of the console window right here. Let's go back to Visual Studio. We'll delete what we've written so far and talk about how different data types interact with each other. We can perform various operations on variables, including mathematical ones. We'll talk more in detail about the different types of variables in one of the upcoming lessons. For now, let's see how variables that store different data types behave when we try a simple addition. For example, let's say we have three variables, an int, a float, and a string. Let's declare them. For example, let's create an int variable called I and assign it a value of 5 right away. Next, we'll declare a float variable called f and also assign it a value, for example, 5.5f. And we'll also declare a variable of type string called s and assign it the value 5, but this time as a character string. Now, let's print the result of adding the int and the float variables. Let's type debug log and to add the two variables. We simply write the plus sign. So we write I plus f. Close the parentheses, add a semicolon, save the script, and switch back to Unity. Now let's run the project. As we can see, the result of this addition is 10.5. It makes perfect sense. 5 plus 5.5 equals 10.5. Now let's do the same thing, but this time with the int and the string variables. Let's replace float with string in our code here. We'll save the script, go back to Unity, and check the result. As we can see, the result of this addition is 55, and notice it's a string, meaning just a sequence of characters. That's because if an operation involves even a single string, all the other operands are converted to strings as well. The result of such an addition is simply one long string made up of all the characters involved in the operation. So we'll get a similar result if we add two or more strings together. Let's bring back our variable called hello world. We'll write string hello world. Now let's add the hello world variable to the s variable. We'll wait for the script to compile and then switch back to our Unity project. Click the play button and keep an eye on the console. The result of this addition will be the string hello world 5 because we're adding it to s. In this screencast, we've explored how different data types interact with each other. When we write code for a game, it's important to understand which data types we're working with in operations, because they can affect the results and the behavior of the variables we're using. So, today, we learned how to work with local variables, how to declare them and assign values. And we also got familiar with different data types and saw how they behave when interacting with each other. And, importantly, we learned how to output messages from our code to the Unity console. This means we were able to create our very first working code in C#, and I congratulate you on that. Ahead of us lies a lot of exciting material. We'll be diving deeper and deeper into C#. For now, I encourage you to practice working with local variables. Good luck, and see you in the next lessons.